The sun began to set over Haven Heights, painting the streets in warm oranges and deep purples. Jacob stood in front of the small diner, a modest place nestled between a bookstore and an old movie theater. It was a part of his routine, a world he felt comfortable in. Every evening he would grab a quick bite before heading home. However, tonight was different. He used to say he didn't mind the sweeping and cleaning part of his job. The diner had charm, the smells of grease and coffee filled his lungs, and the sounds of laughter and clinking silverware warmed his heart. But tonight the broom felt heavier in his hands. Maybe it was the weight of the week, or perhaps it was the way the girl at the counter seemed to shine like a beacon, drawing all the light toward her. Lily had been working at the diner for nearly a month. With her sparkling eyes and bright laugh, she could light up even the darkest days. Jacob had noticed her from the first moment she smiled at him. It was a simple gesture, but it struck him like a bolt of electricity. He wanted to be the reason for more of those smiles, but how could he catch her attention? He was just the guy who arrived every evening, chose the same booth, and swept up after everyone left. His work was quiet, unnoticed, and lost among the hustle of dishes and chatter. Tonight, he pushed the broom slowly, choosing his movements carefully. He lingered a moment at the counter, pretending to adjust his pile of cleaning supplies. The sound of laughter from the table behind him rose and fell like music. He could hear Lily's voice, light and airy, dancing among the other voices like a song. Inside, he ached with the desire to join in, to be part of that laughter. He glanced down at his wrist, where a watch rested. It was a simple timepiece, but he had spent weeks customizing it, swapping bands, adjusting the face, even personalizing the inscription on the back. A reminder for himself, a wish for a brighter future. In a life filled with chores and routine, he wanted to signify more than just passing hours. As Jacob resumed sweeping, he couldn't help but notice how Lily occasionally glanced his way. She had this way of tilting her head ever so slightly, a gesture that seemed to say she noticed him too. His heart raced. Perhaps today was the day he could finally speak to her, break through the walls of his shyness. He knew he should just walk over, strike up a conversation, but the fear held him back. What if he stumbled over his words? What if she didn't even want to talk? The weight of self-doubt pressed against his chest like a heavy blanket. Deciding to take a chance, Jacob left the broom against the wall and took a deep breath. He straightened his shoulders and walked toward the counter where she was cleaning up after a customer. The clatter of dishes filled the air, but all he could hear was the thud of his own heart. "Hey, Lily," he said, his voice almost barely above a whisper. She turned, her face lighting up as she met his gaze. "Hey, Jacob." He was surprised she even knew his name. "Yeah, just finished up," he mumbled, gesturing back toward the broom. She beamed, fairly quiet. He fiddled with his watch, suddenly self-conscious, unsure if he should mention it. But the way she was looking at him with those bright eyes suggested she was genuinely interested. I did get this," he finally said, lifting his wrist slightly. Lily's gaze fell to the watch, and for a moment he felt exposed, as if he had revealed a secret part of himself. She asked, leaning in closer. Jacob nodded, holding it out a bit for her to see. It glittered under the diner's fluorescent lights. "I customized it. It's really nice," she said with genuine admiration. "Time is what you make of it," he replied, feeling the words resonate within him. "I dunno, I love that," she said, her voice soft but filled with excitement. "It really means something." For a moment they shared a connection, a space where words and silences held deeper meanings. Jacob felt a rush of warmth. This was the opening he had longed for. "Yeah, I think about it a lot, especially at this diner." Lily nodded, her eyes sparkling with understanding. "And every time we connect with someone, it makes the moments even more special," she added thoughtfully. He felt a surge of hope. "Oh, she laughed lightly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I study a lot," Jacob asked. "Yeah, I love painting. It's my way of expressing time and experience. He was captivated by her passion, the way she spoke with such vibrance. Every moment spent with her felt electric, as if the air between them crackled with possibilities. But a sharp voice interrupted their conversation, the diner owner, Hank. "Lily." He called from the kitchen, his tone clipped. "Of course, I'll be right there," she replied, but she turned back to Jacob, her eyes apologetic. "Yeah, me too," he said, a little deflated but still hopeful. "Maybe I could show you some sketches sometime." Lily smiled brightly. As she dashed off to assist Hank, Jacob stood there, heart racing. He couldn't believe what had just happened. They had connected, really connected. It was more than just small talk. They had shared ideas, dreams, and laughter. And more importantly, he had taken a step forward out of his shell. The rest of the night passed slowly. Jacob returned to his sweeping, but his heart was light. He kept glancing at Lily, watching as she expertly juggled orders and customers, her energy filling the space. Their brief exchange lingered in his mind, a spark of excitement under the routine. Over the next few days, their conversations grew deeper. Jacob found himself looking forward to his shifts. Every time he saw her, the worries of the world faded. He learned about her art, her dreams of traveling to galleries, and even her thoughts on life. The more he listened, the more he wanted to be a part of that world, but a nagging fear still lurked in the shadows of his heart. What if he pushed too hard? What if she saw him as just a friend? Or worse, what if he lost this connection entirely? One evening, Jacob stood by the counter, leaning on it as he waited for Lily. The place was quieter than usual, a gentle lull settling over the diner. He felt that now was the time to act. The weight of his feelings pressed against him, raw and urgent. Just as he was about to speak, a couple walked in. They were young, laughing, their hands intertwined, and they made their way to the booth right next to him. Jacob felt a jolt of jealousy, an unexpected surge that he quickly masked with forced indifference. It wasn't fair, why should they have the intimacy he craved? Lily took their order, her laughter ringing out like bells. Each giggle felt like a dagger, and he couldn't help but feel the distance between them growing. He glanced down at his watch, that symbolic reminder of time, and wondered how long he would let this linger. As the couple continued to flirt, Jacob's heart sank deeper. Taking a breath, he decided to approach. "Hey, Lily," he said when there was a moment of quiet. She replied, wiping her hands on her apron as she turned to him. "I was thinking maybe we could, I don't know, hang out after work." She paused, her expression flickering as if weighing his words carefully. He nodded, internally praying she would say yes. Lily studied him for a moment, her gaze softened. "I would love that, Jacob, seriously, but you know I've got this project coming up and yeah, I understand. Just whenever you're ready," he said quickly, trying to mask the disappointment that tinged his voice. As she went back to the table, Jacob felt the weight of his question hanging thick in the air. He was terrified of rejection, terrified that their bright connection would dim if he pushed too hard. Days turned into weeks and Jacob continued his routine. They shared laughter and moments, but that elusive "just us" remained unspoken. Each time she turned away, his heart tightened. He loved being around her, yet something in him feared pursuing more. Was it wrong to want more, or should he just be grateful for the time they had? One fateful evening, after a particularly busy night, Lily approached him. Her face was flush, her eyes wide with a strange mix of excitement and nervous energy. His heart raced. She glanced around, almost as if she wanted to escape the din of the diner. A simple question, but it carried the weight of months of unspoken feelings. "I guess I just wanted to remind myself that every moment counts." Her eyes locked onto his, and he could almost see the wheels turning in her mind. "Yes," he said firmly, feeling a spark of confidence surge within him. "I mean, look at us." She nodded, and a small smile danced at the corners of her lips. "You're right. Then let's not wait anymore. Let's make time for each other," he urged, pushing aside the fear that had held him captive for too long. "Okay," she said slowly, her eyes shining. "Okay." The world around them faded, the diner disappearing into a distant hum. All that mattered was the present, the spark of new beginnings, the possibility of what their connection could grow into. In that moment, everything shifted. They both knew now that time was not to be wasted. Their hearts intertwined like brush strokes on a canvas, creating a masterpiece that was just beginning to unfold. It was the sound of a broom sweeping across the diner floor that first caught her attention. Jacob pushed the broom back and forth, the bristles against the tiles creating a rhythmic swish that was commonplace in the little corner cafe. He had his head down, lost in thought, when he noticed her. Lily was wiping down the counter, her laughter mingling with the grease-scented air, and it felt like the sun had decided to shine just for him. But it was the watch that changed everything. He'd spent weeks customizing it, a stark contrast to the diner's ordinary details. A silver band glimmered under the fluorescent lights, the face adorned with intricate designs. Right then, as he swept, he could feel the weight of his hopes resting in that watch. "Time is what you make of it," it read on the back, a mantra for a man in search of something more. At that moment, he pushed the broom with a little extra intent. He didn't just want to clean the floor, he wanted her to notice him. Each sweep was a silent declaration. If he worked hard enough, maybe she'd look up from her chores, maybe she'd see the man behind the mop, maybe she'd notice the watch. The diner filled with the last remnants of evening light as patrons lingered over coffee. Jacob glanced over his shoulder. Lily had just served a couple. They were young, laughing, their intertwined hands resting on the table like a display of intimacy he longed to experience. He swallowed hard, feeling a flush of insecurity. Would he ever reach that kind of closeness with someone like her? But just when he thought the moments would slip away, he caught her eye. She glanced his way, her smile bright and authentic. For just a second, time froze. The laughter in the room faded, and all he could see were those sparkling eyes. His heart raced. Perhaps she had noticed the watch after all. Gathering a bit of courage, Jacob shifted from sweeping to walking. Every step felt like a leap, a small declaration of intent. "Lily," he called out, his voice somewhat shaky but determined. She exclaimed, her energy lighting up the space between them. "Yeah," he replied, taking a breath. She beamed. He hesitated. It was silly to get lost in the mundane when there was a deeper connection waiting to be explored. "Fairly quiet, just the usual," he finally said. As he lifted his wrist, showing her the watch, he noticed her eyebrows raise in surprise. "Wow, that's beautiful." Lily leaned closer, genuinely interested. "Time is what you make of it," he said, feeling a warmth spread through him. Those words had motivated him for weeks, almost like a compass guiding him to her. "I love that," she said, her voice sincere. "It's a reminder not to waste a moment." In that moment, they connected in a way that felt almost electric. Jacob's heart thudded in his chest. She wasn't just making small talk, she understood. She felt the same urgency, that same hunger for something greater. But as quickly as it built, that momentum wavered. Just then, the owner of the diner, Hank, barked orders from the kitchen. "Lily," she called back, and her smile flickered, almost dimming. Before Jacob could form another thought, she was gone, rushing to attend to the customers. Jacob went back to his sweeping, but the rhythm was different now. He swept with renewed purpose, each stroke a silent promise to himself. He would find a way to keep this conversation alive. Somehow he had to make it clear that he wanted more than just a fleeting moment. Days turned into weeks, and their brief chats turned into something more profound. During those moments, it felt as though the diner faded away, and it was just the two of them in a bubble filled with dreams and laughter. Jacob learned about her passion for art, her desire to travel and study creativity in other parts of the world. Every laugh she shared pulled him in deeper, yet every time they parted, a familiar pang of longing settled in his chest. The moments together were intoxicating, but shadows of doubt crept in. What if she saw him just as a friend? What if that beautiful connection was only one-sided? It would break him. What was worse than yearning for someone who didn't return the affection? One particularly busy night, Jacob stood behind the counter, restlessly fidgeting with his watch. He couldn't help but notice that she always smiled at him in a way that felt sincere. But tonight, she wasn't just busy, she was being flirted with. A customer, dressed in a slick jacket and ice-blue eyes, had been laying it on thick. Jacob felt his stomach twist as he watched the interaction, feeling an ache deep in his chest. Jacob called out, trying to pull her attention away from the suitor leaning against the counter. She replied, still smiling at the man who was now playing with his hair, his eyes glinting as if he were the sun itself. His heart sunk further. It felt like the walls of the diner were closing in on him. He knew he had to act to pull this back before he lost her in the haze of flattery. He needed to break through to make his intentions clear. He stepped forward and leaned against the counter, his eyes steady on Lily. She turned back, her expression shifting slightly, but there was something bright behind her eyes. Sure, but that was just the beginning. As the night wound down and the last customers filtered out, Jacob's pulse raced. He finally had her alone. The flickering neon lights cast an almost surreal glow across the diner, transforming it into a world of possibilities. "Thanks for making time," Jacob said, his voice steady but his heart racing. "Of course you're always here helping out," she asked, genuinely curious. He chuckled nervously, a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Well, I wanted something that would remind me to seize the moments." "It's beautiful," she said, her gaze not wavering. "It sounds silly," he admitted, warmth flooding his cheeks, "but it represents something bigger for me." Lily's eyes widened. "That's not silly at all, it's incredible," he asked, leaning in ever so slightly. Her laughter was bright and infectious. Absolutely. Their laughter faded as the significance of their words hung thick in the air. Jacob could feel a whirlwind moving in his chest, hope mixed with fear, courage mixed with vulnerability. This conversation wasn't just a chat, it felt like an awakening for both of them. "Let's make time for that," Jacob said, his voice firm with resolve. Her gaze softened, and for a moment it felt as if the room paused. "Yes, I would love that," she breathed. He felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over him, as if the weight of thousands of untouched moments had finally been lifted. In that flickering diner light, they stood on the precipice of something beautiful. As they continued to talk, Jacob noticed her smile grow wider, her energy radiating, and every cheerful laugh made him yearn to be closer. The connection they were building felt genuine, invigorating. This was no ordinary moment. It was turning into a vibrant tapestry woven together with threads of hope and dreams. The weeks slipped by, filled with shared sketches, laughter, and dreams discussed over stolen moments at the counter. Jacob found himself eagerly waiting for the next shift, the next laugh, the next glimpse of her bright eyes. In a world filled with ordinary routines, they were carving out something extraordinary. But just as everything seemed perfect, the winds shifted once more. Rumors began to circulate around the diner that Hank was considering selling the place. The news hit Jacob hard. What did that mean for his job, for his connection with Lily? The thought of everything they had built crumbling felt suffocating. One evening, as they cleaned up together, Jacob couldn't hold it in any longer. "Hey Lily, have you?" He hesitated, dread pooling in his stomach. "I heard some talk," she admitted, her eyes narrowing slightly, "but I'm not sure what to make of it." "No, I'm not. I'm worried, Lily." She reached out, her hand resting on his arm. "Me too. This place means so much to me." In that moment, the weight of dread felt palpable. They stood locked in an understanding, a shared feeling that filled the space around them. Could they really hold on to what they had created? "I think we should do something, fight for it," Jacob suggested, feeling the embers of determination spark within him. "If this means something to both of us, we should let everyone know." Lily's eyes sparked with energy. "You're right, we could host an art show, showcase local talents." Jacob felt a grin spread across his face. Over the next few weeks, they poured their hearts into planning the event. Every moment spent drawing posters, gathering supplies, and reaching out felt as though they were not just battling for a diner, but igniting the connection they had cultivated. The time on his wrist became more than a simple watch. It symbolized the urgency to seize their moment. The night of the art show arrived, and the space buzzed with energy. Locals filled the diner, laughter mingling with the scent of coffee and baked goods. Jacob stood proudly beside Lily as they unveiled the memories they had gathered, the heartbreaks, triumphs, and ordinary moments transformed into art. As the crowd moved from piece to piece, Jacob caught sight of her vibrant smile, shining bright against the backdrop of their documentation. It was an electric moment. They had brought everyone together, united in their love for this little corner of the world. But then he noticed something beyond the art, a figure at the back, lingering near the door. It was Hank. Jacob's heart raced as he approached, knowing that this was going to be crucial. "Hey, Hank," he called out, trying to keep his nerves at bay. Hank nodded, his expression unreadable. He scanned the art displayed and then turned to Jacob. Jacob's heart pounded. Hank hesitated, his features softening a bit. With every word, Jacob felt hope blooming. "So, what are your thoughts? I mean, the community loves it here. Can we do this more often?" Hank held up a hand to pause him. "I'm not going to sell it. I see the passion. This diner has heart because of people like you too. Count me in." Cheers erupted in the room, excitement spilling like the vibrant colors painted around them. Jacob turned to look for Lily, and when their eyes met, the world around them faded again. They shared a smile that spoke of victory, of friendship solidified into something deeper. As the evening continued, the watch on his wrist glinted under the warm lights. It was more than a passage of time. It was a reminder of connections forged and battles won. They had championed something that could easily have been lost, but through their shared dreams, they had discovered something even more profound. And in the heart of that diner, among laughter, art, and the connections they had built, Jacob knew this was just the beginning. The future was alive with possibilities, and they were ready to embrace it together, side by side. The muffled sound of chatter and laughter filled the air as Jacob pushed the broom across the worn wooden floor of the diner, the rhythmic swishing almost meditative. It was a late Thursday evening, and the light outside was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the big front windows. But Jacob wasn't thinking about the sunset. He was trying desperately to think of a way to catch her eye. Every move he made felt deliberate, like he was on a stage, and she was the only audience member that mattered. Lily was busy behind the counter, her hair pulled back, a pencil tucked behind her ear, her laughter spilling over the shoulder of a customer who had clearly overstayed his welcome. Every time their eyes met, Jacob felt a flutter in his chest. It was strange how she could brighten his day with just a smile. But it wasn't just her smile that captivated him. It was the way she moved, flowing through the space, effortlessly connecting with everyone around her. It made him feel small in comparison. Did she even notice him? Did she know how hard he worked, how long he had dreamed of a moment just like this? He pushed the broom harder against the floor, trying to summon the courage that had eluded him day after day. He knew the watch on his wrist was a part of this. It wasn't just any ordinary timepiece. He had customized it, pouring in both creativity and money, spending evenings adjusting its features until it felt like an extension of himself. In a world where moments sometimes felt fleeting, he wanted something to ground himself, to remind him that his life was within his control. And maybe, just maybe, if he displayed it enough, Lily would take notice. He glanced back over his shoulder, adjusting the cuff of his shirt just enough to reveal the gleam of that watch. His heart raced. It was now or never. Drawing in a breath, he brushed the sweat from his brow and walked up to the counter. He called out, forcing enthusiasm into his tone. She looked up, momentarily startled, but then her eyes lit up as she recognized him. "Jacob, yeah, I thought I'd finish early tonight," he said, awkwardly gesturing to the empty floor. "Look at that." She replied, her smile radiating warmth. He felt a rush of pride at her words, but the friendly compliment was not what he needed. "Thanks." Lily raised an eyebrow, intrigued. He hesitated for a moment, the weight of the watch on his wrist feeling heavier somehow, but he knew this was the moment to strike. With an almost theatrical flourish, he lifted his wrist, angling it so the light caught the silver band just right. "Check it out." Her eyes followed the motion, curiosity piqued. "Wow, that's really nice," she said, leaning in closer. "Time is what you make of it," he replied, feeling a sense of vulnerability wash over him. "It's a reminder, you know, life's short." As he spoke, he could see her eyes soften. They were filled with a light that sent warmth flooding through him. "That's beautiful," she said, her voice sincere. And then he saw it, the way her gaze lingered just a bit longer on his watch, and by extension on him. Maybe there was more to this moment than he had thought. Maybe after all this time, he wasn't invisible to her. But the moment quickly faded as Hank, the diner owner, called out from the kitchen. "Lily," she exclaimed, her energy shifting again as she dashed back to work. Jacob felt both elated and frustrated. This was the dance. Each time he thought they were moving closer, something pulled them back apart. Still, as he returned to sweeping, he couldn't help but let hope unfurl in his chest. Maybe they would talk again soon. Maybe the watch had sparked something that would ignite into a deeper connection. As the days passed, the small moments turned into a ritual. Jacob would come in, sweep, and collect small glances from Lily, each one building a thread of connection between them. She would sometimes laugh at his jokes, share stories about her art, and ask him about his day. In return, he shared bits of his life, revealing just enough to keep her interested while keeping the bigger parts of him guarded. But there was this gravity pulling them together, an unspoken bond that neither of them dared to acknowledge. The evenings snaked by, each one more intoxicating than the last, filled with laughter and discussions that hovered on the edge of something deeper. Jacob would often find himself tracing the watch's inscription with his fingers, feeling like it was guiding him toward a path he needed to take. But as weeks slipped into months, a looming question hung in the air. Would he ever take that leap? The fear of being vulnerable gnawed at him. What if she saw him as just another friend? What if he put himself out there and fell flat? One slow evening, while the diner was quieter than usual, Jacob stood at the counter prepping for closing time. He watched as Lily arranged the last of the plates, her focus unwavering. The light caught her hair just right, casting a halo effect that made it hard to look away. "Lily," he blurted out, heart pounding. "Can we talk?" She turned, a quizzical expression on her face. "Sure." Taking a deep breath, he shifted slightly, his gaze locking onto hers. "I know this might sound strange, but I've really enjoyed our conversations." Lily looked at him, her expression unreadable, and for a moment tension filled the air. "Jacob, you're amazing." It was the friendship that hit him like a punch to the gut. He felt breathless, wishing desperately for different words to spill from her lips, but he steadied himself. She blinked, surprise flashing in her eyes. His heart raced, each beat echoing louder in his ears. "I mean, we have this connection. I think about you a lot. What if we went out sometime, just you and me?" A long pause followed, and his mind raced with anxiety. What if he had misread everything? He could feel his vulnerability stretching thin. Finally, she spoke. "Jacob, I like you, I really do. But I'm just trying to focus on my art right now." Her honesty struck him like a wave, washing away the hope he had built up. "Right," he said, forcing a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "I get it, just..." She reached across the counter, her hand brushing against his. "I appreciate you saying that, it means a lot to me." But it wasn't enough. The weight of rejection felt heavy in his chest as he stepped back, retreating into the boundaries they had created. Inside, he felt like he was losing something he cherished even before he fully grasped it. Over the next few days, the diner's atmosphere shifted. Conversations felt lighter, but his heart felt heavier. Jacob focused on the watch, reminding himself of the mantra. But with every sweep of the broom or flicker of laughter from behind the counter, he felt that connection fading like a mirage. Each day that passed felt like a weight on his heart. Then one night, the air shifted yet again. It was busier than usual, and Jacob was hurrying to keep up with the sweeping, but his eyes were constantly drawn to Lily as she served a large table. Suddenly, a commotion broke out. A man, clearly drunk, began shouting, stumbling through the diner, upsetting their little world. "Hey!" Hank shouted, rushing out from the back, trying to control the situation. The man shouted back, stumbling toward the counter where Lily stood frozen, eyes wide. Jacob's heart dropped. Something inside him snapped. He dropped the broom. Time slowed around him. He rushed forward, moving instinctively. In one swift motion, Jacob stepped between the man and Lily. The tension in the air was thick, charged with adrenaline, and he was very aware of every heartbeat in that moment. The drunken man sneered, waving his hands as if pushing Jacob away. But Jacob held his ground. "Just walk away, man." The situation escalated, voices rose, but all Jacob could see was fear in Lily's eyes, and that fueled an urgency he didn't even know he had. Moments ticked away, but it felt like time was on his side, like the watch on his wrist had given him some sort of strength. "Back off," he repeated firmly. In that brief whirlwind, everything happened so fast. The man, realizing he was outmatched, muttered something under his breath and turned away, stumbling toward the door. As soon as the door slammed behind him, Jacob could feel the entire diner exhale. Lily rushed to his side, her eyes wide with a mix of concern and appreciation. She exclaimed, grabbing his arm, but all he could focus on was the pounding in his chest and the adrenaline that still coursed through his veins. "But I wanted to," he admitted, catching his breath. In that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of shaken nerves, the laughter just a few moments ago replaced with apprehension, something shifted between them. Their eyes locked, and a silent understanding passed. They were no longer just the worker and the girl behind the counter. They were two people who had recognized something deeper. And suddenly she leaned in, brushing her fingers against the watch on his wrist. "I don't think I've ever seen someone stand up like that for me," she said softly. His heart raced. "What you did back there was incredible, Jacob," she said, sincerity clear in her voice. It was a simple acknowledgement, but it felt monumental. In that moment, something ignited between them, a spark fueled by bravery and vulnerability. She was looking at him with newfound clarity. He asked, his voice steadying as he let the feelings wash over him. Lily smiled, and it was a light that pierced through the darkness of the moments before. Weeks turned into a whirlwind of emotions, and that connection between them flourished like never before. They found themselves sharing dreams, taking walks, and exploring art in ways they had never imagined. The watch on Jacob's wrist wasn't just an accessory anymore. It was the token of a different kind of time, one filled with possibilities. One starlit night, as they sat atop a hill overlooking the city, surrounded by quiet and a sea of stars, Lily turned to him, her expression serious yet filled with warmth. "Jacob, I never really thanked you for what you did that night," she began, her voice soft but resolute. The stars twinkled around them, a backdrop for everything that had come to pass. You deserve someone who will always stand up for you, Lily. You've taught me that life is too short to hold back, Jacob shared, his voice sincere. The watch gleamed under the moonlight, and in that moment he understood its significance better than ever. Life was made of moments, and as they leaned into each other, it felt like they were finally making the most of theirs. Together, they embraced the future, their laughter rising to join the night sky. The journey had shaped them both, turning two solitary lives into something vibrant, something extraordinary, and it all started with the simplest of actions: pushing a broom in a diner and hoping to be noticed. In the dim light of the diner, the sound of a broom sweeping across the floor created a rhythmic undertone, almost a heartbeat echoing through the space. Jacob pushed the broom with purpose, glancing up every now and then to catch a glimpse of her. Lily was behind the counter, her laughter bubbling over a tall stack of dishes tainted with the aroma of grease and coffee. Her presence filled the diner with an energy he craved, a warmth that wrapped around him like a cozy blanket against the chill of loneliness. But tonight was different. Jacob had decided it was time to change the narrative of his life, a shift sparked by the glimmer of a watch on his wrist. This wasn't just any watch, it was a bespoke piece he had designed himself. Those words had become his mantra, a reminder that he had the power to shape his own destiny. As he pushed the broom, he thought of every moment wasted, each second that slipped through his fingers while he quietly admired Lily from a distance. This evening the stakes felt higher. He could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on him like a heavy fog. Each sweep of the broom felt like a silent plea for recognition, for connection. Would she notice him tonight? Would she even glance his way? Just then their eyes met across the room. Her laughter, mixed with the sound of clinking silverware, instantly sent his heart racing. It wasn't just a fleeting glance, it felt electric, as if the world around them paused for a heartbeat. She smirked, her eyes sparkling with mischief, and for a moment Jacob dared to believe that maybe she had noticed the watch after all. Gathering courage, he let the broom rest against the wall and approached the counter, his hands trembling slightly. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind countless times, but now that he was here, words felt elusive. "Hey, Lily," he began, his voice a mix of nerves and excitement. She asked, a hint of curiosity dancing in her voice. He lifted his wrist, angling it so the light caught the watch just right. "I customized this," he said, his breath catching in his throat. Her eyes widened as they traced the contours of the watch. "Wow," she leaned in closer, captivated. "I thought it would be a good reminder," he explained, his heart racing at her interest. "That's beautiful," she replied softly, and in that moment he felt the walls of uncertainty begin to crumble. Suddenly the diner's owner, Hank, emerged from the kitchen, cutting through their moment like a knife. "Lily, I need those orders." The urgency in his voice was palpable. She shouted back, her bright smile dimming as she turned away. Jacob felt his hopes dissipate like steam rising from a freshly brewed cup of coffee. The days that followed were a blur of routine. Jacob came in every evening, sweeping the floor, perfecting his craft and stealing glances at Lily. Each laugh, each shared anecdote deepened the connection, but the fear of crossing that invisible line held him captive. Would she ever see him as more than just the guy who worked behind the scenes? One rainy Thursday, as the diner became cozy under clouds and the scent of fresh coffee filled the air, Jacob felt a surge of courage. He stowed his broom away and approached the counter, heart pounding. She replied, her tone brightening the dull atmosphere outside. "What do you think about the concept of time?" His words spilled out faster than he could think. She exclaimed, animated. Jacob leaned in, captivated. "Exactly, I've been trying to be more intentional." Her gaze softened as she traced the edges of the timepiece with her eyes. "It's impressive that you're taking those steps." For a moment they shared a connection that felt rare and precious, but as Hank's voice echoed from the back once again, the bubble burst. "Lily," her expression shifted as anxiety crept back in. "I gotta go," she said, rushing to fulfill her orders. Jacob stood at the counter, feeling an odd mix of excitement and disappointment. Weeks trickled by, and as autumn crept in, the diner became a backdrop of falling leaves and soft, golden light. Each day, Jacob felt drawn deeper into his feelings for Lily. She shared stories about her dreams of becoming an artist, her plans for the future. He hung on her every word, wanting to be part of even the simplest of her aspirations. But then came that fateful night. The air was thick with anticipation as the diner bustled. The scent of burgers and fries wafted through, but Jacob barely noticed. He was caught up in his own thoughts, wrestling with his emotions when he noticed she was unusually quiet. He asked, leaning against the counter, concern in his voice. She sighed deeply, brushing her hair back away from her face. "I've been thinking a lot about potential." Jacob felt a heaviness settle over him. "I love it here, but I'm also scared to get stuck," she said, her eyes darting to the diner's window where shadows danced outside. "I want to take risks, I want to create." His heart swelled for her, and he realized that what he felt for her was deeper than admiration, it was empathy. "You're going to do amazing things, Lily, but you can't be afraid to try." A thoughtful expression crossed her face, and then something shifted. "You're right," he nodded, the tension between them palpable. The air felt electric, charged with something unspoken, a moment that was begging to be acted upon. But just as he was about to say something more, a ruckus erupted at the door. A group of rowdy teenagers burst in, laughter and shouts echoing through the small space. Jacob and Lily exchanged glances, the spell broken once again. Lily sighed, her energy shifting back into professional mode. "I'll be right back." Jacob felt the weight of regret settle heavily as he stepped back, the breath he didn't realize he'd been holding escaping him. It was a cycle, a dance that left him both hopeful and frustrated. Days passed and the diner became a canvas painting Jacob's life, each shift filled with stolen moments. He watched as Lily served customers, laughed with friends, and carried an air of brilliance. But every episode of connection faded behind the routine, and he wrestled with vulnerability, fearful of risking their friendship for something that might not blossom. On a quiet evening, Jacob stood wiping down the counter, heart beating fast. That same uneasy dance had played out too many times. The two of them had shared dreams, fears, and aspirations, yet he had never mustered the courage to take the leap. What if she was simply not interested in him like that? Would revealing his feelings change everything? Lily's voice broke through his thoughts and he turned to face her. He tried to keep his voice steady, though the fluttering in his chest gave him away. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and for a moment he forgot his fears. Of course, she carefully led him outside to a small park adjacent to the diner. The stars twinkled above, casting a serene glow over everything. She pointed to a mural on the side of a nearby building, colorful strokes flooding the brick surface. "It's beautiful," he exclaimed, his heart swelling at the sight. "I collaborated with some artists last month and it finally came together," she said, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "You've got talent," he replied, feeling messy emotions stir. Lily turned to him and suddenly the barrier felt thin between them. "You're always so supportive, Jacob," that was it. All the weeks of holding back flooded out. "I care about you, Lily, more than just as a friend. I want to be in your life, support you, and share adventures with you." Silence hung in the air as she processed his words. He felt exposed and vulnerable, wrapped in uncertainty, hoping she would see the sincerity of his feelings. Finally, she smiled, a warmth blooming in her expression. The world around them faded, and for a moment it felt like they were the only two people in existence. He asked, breathless. "Yeah," she said softly, "I just didn't know how to approach it." "No way," he breathed, relief washing over him. The gravitational pull between them intensified. He reached for her hand, the contact sparking an exhilarating surge through both of them. They stood there under the stars, the struggles of the past drifting away. "Let's take that leap together," Jacob said, feeling more alive than ever. Lily's eyes glistened with excitement. In that magical moment, sincerity intertwined them. The watch on his wrist felt lighter and full of promise. He had finally faced the fears that had held him captive for so long. The diner remained the backdrop to their story, both a reminder of humble beginnings and the adventure that lay ahead. Together, they would create an extraordinary life filled with laughter, art, and infinite moments, a journey defined not by time, but by how they chose to spend it. Each day was a canvas waiting to be filled, a story waiting to be told. As they walked back to the diner hand in hand, Jacob felt a sense of joy surge within him. He had pushed the broom long enough, and now he realized that true moments happen when you embrace the unknown. The past had shaped him, yes, but the future was a place ripe with possibilities, and he was ready to dive in with Lily by his side. In the journey ahead of them, they wouldn't just be filling hours, they would be creating memories, exploring the depths of their dreams together. And while the watch on his wrist would continue to tick, it now served as a reminder that true time is defined by the connections we forge, the memories we create, and the dreams we dare to chase. The diner was nearly empty, the neon lights flickering softly against the glass windows, while the hum of a distant conversation trickled from the few remaining tables. Jacob stood with a broom in hand, pushing it across the worn tiled floor with a steady rhythm. His gaze would occasionally dart to the counter where Lily worked, her hands moving deftly as she wiped down the surfaces, organizing condiments and pouring coffee for a lingering customer. She was light, a breath of fresh air in the cozy, grease-scented diner. Jacob had felt drawn to her warmth since the first moment he had seen her. But tonight, the push of the broom felt more like a silent prayer. He was hoping she would notice him. He was hoping she would notice the custom watch on his wrist. It wasn't just any watch. This one was special crafted and customized by him over weeks of anticipation. The sleek, silver band shimmered under the diner's fluorescent lights, the face displaying the delicate art of craftsmanship. Those words had become his secret mantra, motivating him to break out of monotony, to seize every moment. But tonight felt like they could mean something deeper. With each stroke of the broom, his heart raced, fueled by an energy he didn't fully understand. He glanced at Lily again, noticing how her laughter mingled with the clinking of glasses and the whispered conversations around her. Something about the way she moved, the way her hair cascaded softly against her shoulders, drew him in. Why couldn't he just walk over and say something? Why did the thoughts swirl in his mind like a storm? As if drawn by an invisible thread, Jacob maneuvered the broom to lean it against the wall. He took a deep breath, steeling his nerves. Tonight was the night. He would push through the fear and give voice to what had been building inside him for months. A small part of him screamed to retreat, but he squeezed past that nagging doubt and stepped closer to the counter. "Hey, Lily," he called out, his voice steadier than he felt. She looked up, her face brightening as she met his gaze. "Hey, Jacob, yeah, thought I'd finish early tonight," he replied, trying to sound casual. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. He lifted his wrist, the watch glimmering as he did. "Check this out." He tried to keep the excitement in his voice as he presented it to her. Her eyebrows shot up, genuine surprise coloring her features. "Wow, that's really nice." "Time is what you make of it," he said, feeling a blend of vulnerability and thrill. Her smile widened and Jacob felt warmth rush through him. "That's beautiful." In that striking moment, it felt as if the whole diner faded, leaving just the two of them in a world of shared understanding. But the spell was broken when Hank, the owner, boomed from the kitchen, "Lily, of course." Her expression shifted into a professional mask, a flicker of responsibility overshadowing their moment as she rushed off. Jacob stepped back, feeling the excited warmth retreat into frustration. Was this the cycle they were stuck in? Every time he thought they were connecting, something pulled them apart. He sighed, forcing himself to return to his duties with the broom, resigned yet hopeful. As the weeks rolled by, the evenings melted into routine. Each day brought small glances, brief conversations, and laughter that lit up the dreary walls of the diner. Jacob found himself eagerly anticipating his shifts, submerged in a blend of nervous energy and admiration for Lily. Yet deep inside him, a storm of emotions brewed. Was this all there was? Just fleeting moments that never turned into something more? One rainy Friday night, as thunder rumbled outside, Jacob stood at the counter cleaning with an intensity that mirrored the downpour. The diner felt warm and inviting, almost like an island amidst the storm. Lily was pouring coffee for a couple at the end of the bar, and as she did, Jacob couldn't help but watch her. He traced the watch on his wrist, feeling a sense of urgency rising within him. Finally, he took a step forward, his pulse racing. He called out, feeling the storm of his heart echo his daring move. She turned, a spark of surprise in her eyes. "Sure." Taking a breath, Jacob glanced around. "Have you ever thought about how time works?" Lily tilted her head slightly, a thoughtful look flashing across her face. "Absolutely. Sometimes I feel like I'm just running in circles, he replied, feeling the rush of connection surge between them. She said, her voice bubbling with excitement, "I admire that about you, Jacob." He felt a warmth flourish in his chest, but he struggled to voice the deeper feelings stirring below the surface. "I think we all need reminders sometimes." The conversation lingered in the air like an unspoken promise, but then just as Jacob felt a shift, Hank's voice rang out once again, breaking the spell. "Lily, can we expedite these orders?" She shouted back, the excitement in her eyes dimming as duty called. As the nights went on, Jacob found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The moments they shared, rich with connection and meaning, felt like a lifeline, yet he couldn't find the courage to take the leap. Fear tugged at him. What if it all fell apart? What if Lily only saw him as a friend? One quiet evening, Jacob stood beside her at the counter, his heart racing. She replied, smiling brightly as she tossed her hair back, "What do you see in your future?" The words tumbled out, mingling excitement with trepidation. She paused, thoughtful. "I dream of traveling, painting everything I see, bringing stories to life through colors, but I worry about how to get started." His chest tightened. "You have to take risks, Lily. Life's too brief to play it safe." Her eyes sparked, holding his gaze. "You're right." The air seemed to crackle with intensity. Jacob leaned closer, feeling an urge to reach out. "I just wish you knew how much potential you have." Before he could say more, the dinner rush struck, filled with laughter and loud conversations, drowning out their connection. As the chaos enveloped them, Jacob stepped back, frustration mounting with each interruption. Why couldn't they get a moment without distractions? Days morphed into weeks, each one a collage of fleeting moments entwined with a grasp of unspoken feelings. The tension thickened the closer they grew, electrifying the spaces between them. Yet every evening he struggled with the fear of revealing how much she meant to him. Then came that fateful night, a storm brewing both outside and within. The diner was quieter than usual. A few scattered customers occupied the booths while raindrops drummed rhythmically against the window. A sense of calm settled, the chaos of the world outside offering a sanctuary. Jacob stood at the counter, waiting for Lily to finish a task. As she turned, their eyes locked and time slowed. It was now or never. "Lily," he said softly, his heart hammering against his ribcage. Her voice was steady, but her eyes danced with curiosity. "I've put off saying it for too long. I like you more than just a friend. I keep thinking about all the moments we share, and it makes me realize that I want more." Silence enveloped the diner for what felt like an eternity, the weight of unspoken emotions hanging in the air. Jacob's heart raced, he felt exposed, a raw truth laid out between them. Lily's expression softened, her cheeks gently flushed. "Jacob, I didn't know you felt that way." His pulse quickened, hope igniting within him. She hesitated, searching for words. "I think I've been scared too, like we both are." With that, the storm between them broke and the floodgates of possibility opened. They stepped closer, the space between them charged with vulnerability and anticipation. Jacob couldn't help himself. He took a gentle step toward her, heart pounding as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. You know, we really shouldn't let fear hold us back. Lily's eyes sparkled and he could see the walls crumbling around them. You're right. Encouraged by her words, Jacob lifted his wrist, showcasing the watch again. This watch reminds me to make every second count. Then, just like that, the world outside faded away, leaving only the warmth radiating between them. All the doubts, the fears, they melted into the background as they shared tentative smiles, the unspoken bond finally blossoming into something tangible. As they stood there, the diner felt like a sanctuary, a backdrop to their transformation. The laughter, the clinking utensils, it faded to a soft hum as the two of them forged a connection that would defy the constraints of time. Let's make our moments as incredible as we dreamed together, he whispered, hope flickering in his eyes. She nodded, her smile glowing with promise. As the evening drew to a close, Jacob felt lighter, more alive than ever. They stood shoulder to shoulder, ready to step into a future reshaped by shared dreams and untold stories. With the world outside still drumming against the diner's windows, they took a deep breath, two individuals ready to embrace the limitless possibilities that lay ahead. Tonight they would laugh, create, and celebrate the beautiful truth that love and connection bloom in the spaces between moments. And as Jacob glanced at the watch on his wrist, he knew it wasn't symbolizing just time anymore. It was a beacon for all the moments yet to come, and together they would make them unforgettable. Jacob didn't usually think much about the future while he swept the floor of the cozy corner diner. Sound of the broom bristles grazing the polished tiles was rhythmic, almost meditative, but tonight was different. Tonight he pushed the broom with a purpose, as if each stroke might unearth something hidden. His heart was racing, echoing the beats of the classic rock song playing softly in the background. He glanced up at the counter where Lily was busy pouring coffee, and for a moment everything else faded. She flicked her hair back carelessly, and laughter erupted from her lips as a customer cracked a joke. It was like sunshine cutting through a cloudy sky. He had to get her attention. Jacob felt the watch on his wrist pressing against him, his pride, his achievement. It wasn't just a timepiece, it was a symbol of hope and ambition. Custom made, it glimmered under the diner's fluorescent lights. He had spent weeks saving up and designing it, ensuring every detail was just right. He pushed the broom harder against the ground, not just cleaning, but willing it to be noticed. If she could see that watch, it might lead to something more. He took a steadying breath, steeling himself. This wasn't just about a watch, it was about stepping out of the shadows and into the light, into her light. With his heart racing like a drum, Jacob decided he had to make this happen. He leaned the broom against the wall, forcing himself to take the few steps toward the counter. "Hey, Lily," he called out, trying to keep his voice steady, even though his palms felt clammy. She looked up, her eyes brightening. "Hey, Jacob," "Yeah," he said, heart pounding hard enough that he thought she might hear it. Her curiosity filled the air, and for a fleeting moment he felt a surge of confidence. He raised his wrist, the watch catching the light just right, glimmering like a promise yet to be fulfilled. "Check this out." Her eyes widened, genuine interest sparkling within them. "Oh wow, that's really nice. Time is what you make of it," he replied, nervous energy coursing through him. Lily leaned closer, interested. "It's beautiful. It really speaks to the whole idea of seizing the moment." In that moment, everything around them faded, the clattering dishes, the booth customers talking animatedly. It was just the two of them, sharing a connection built on understanding and a shared appreciation for what mattered. But that fragile connection shattered as Hank, the diner owner, shouted from the kitchen, "Lily, get back here." "Oh," she exclaimed, the brightness in her eyes dimming as she turned to attend to the chef's request. Jacob felt deflated, as if the air had been let out of a balloon. Each time they moved closer, it seemed something pulled them apart. He sighed, feeling the warmth of hope dissipate like steam. Days turned into weeks, and that ritual dance between them continued. Jacob would come in, scrub the floors, and engage in light banter with Lily whenever he could steal a moment. Each conversation drew them closer, yet every laugh felt layered with an unspoken barrier. Fear pushed at the edges of his bravery. What if she didn't see him that way? Was he destined to remain just the guy who swept the floors? One sunny afternoon, as the diner filled with customers, Jacob stood at the counter, filling glasses with water. He watched Lily interact with the regulars, her laughter bright and infectious, fighting his own insecurities. As she smiled, he felt a twinge of hope. Could he really break through that wall? She called, waving him over. His heart raced as he walked to her side. "Sure, just a couple plates for that booth," she said, pointing. As they moved in sync, it felt like they were dancing around their feelings, the air thick with unvoiced thoughts. He instinctively reached for the plates when she handed them over. Fingers brushed for a brief second, and it sent shockwaves through him. Jacob asked, trying to keep the conversation going even if it veered toward familiar territory. "Every day," she admitted, her voice softening. "I'm still working on my art portfolio, but honestly," he blurted out, surprised by his own confidence, "you're incredibly talented. Your artwork has so much life in it." A smile crept across her face, brightening the room. "Thanks, Jacob." An idea struck him, burning brightly. "You should have an art exhibit," she replied, glancing down as if contemplating the weight of the idea. You have to at least think about it, he encouraged, trying to infuse certainty into his voice. She looked thoughtful, but Jacob caught a glimmer of hope in her eyes. As the night went on and after a rush of excited customers left the diner, she came up to him by the counter. His heart jumped, a mixture of fear and excitement. "If I did an exhibit, would you help?" "You've been so supportive and I could really use it," she said, and he felt as if the floor was disappearing beneath him. He replied, enthusiasm pouring out of him. The connection between them swelled, filled with energy and promise. But as quickly as the moment kindled, it felt like it slipped through his fingers like sand. He could sense the back and forth struggle, a desire to break the barriers entwined with fear. Over the next few weeks, they met outside of work to brainstorm ideas for her exhibit. There were moments filled with laughter, artistic discussions, and the comforting ease of companionship that leaned towards something deeper. Each meeting left Jacob breathless, yet slightly apprehensive. The risk of confessing his feelings hung heavy in the air between them. Then came the night he had secretly dreaded and anticipated all at once. The weather shifted, bringing with it an early summer storm that skittered across the skyline and soaked the pavement outside the diner. But inside, the atmosphere buzzed to life with colors of excitement and warmth. The diner had become a makeshift gallery decorated with Lily's vibrant local art. Jacob had hung every piece, ensuring they were showcased beautifully. As the rain drummed against the windows, the community began trickling in, drawn in by the promise of art and passion. It felt like magic was unfolding all around them. Jacob stood proudly at the door, welcoming patrons, watching as Lily floated among her admirers, her face aglow with enthusiasm. Part of him wondered if tonight might be the perfect moment, if he could muster the courage to step out of the shadows. As the crowd ebbed and flowed, she finally approached him, her smile warm and radiant. "Thank you for all your hard work, Jacob. I couldn't let you down," he replied, warmth pooling in his chest. They shared a moment of silence, both feeling a rush of possibilities. It was then that Jacob decided he couldn't hold back any longer. "Lily, can we step outside?" The rain had slowed to a soft patter as they stepped out onto the diner's porch, the air fresh and invigorating. He felt every heartbeat as he turned to face her, the watch on his wrist gleaming. Tonight was incredible. "Your art has touched so many," he said, searching for the right words. Her eyes widened and he could see the flicker of anticipation. "I don't want to just support you as a friend, I like you, Lily." He held his breath, the confession hanging in the space between them. She began, and in that moment he felt as if the world stood still. "I know it's sudden," he rushed, heart racing. "But none of the moments we've shared, feels forced to me. It feels real." A small smile crept across her lips, her gaze steady and confident. "You're not alone in feeling this way," she said softly, biting her lip as she searched for the words. "I felt a connection with you too." Hope ignited in Jacob's chest as he stepped closer. "I think we take a chance," she replied, her voice gaining strength. As the last of the rain softened, they stood under the streetlight, their world filled with possibilities. The barriers that had once held them back began to crumble as they leaned toward each other. This was a moment defined not by fear, but by mutual desire, a willingness to embrace vulnerability and take that leap. Jacob reached out, brushing a thumb against her wrist, feeling the warmth radiate from her skin. "Let's make the most of our time together," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I would love that," she said, and with that they connected, a spark igniting within. As they shared their first kiss, the storm clouds above parted, and suddenly everything felt clear. The watch on his wrist was no longer just a piece of craftsmanship. It was a testament to the moments they would forge together, the love that would grow between them. In the pouring rain that once threatened to drown their hopes, they found a shelter of their own, a safe space filled with laughter, dreams, and the promise of tomorrow. They would face the world hand in hand, knowing that they had chosen to seize every moment that lay ahead. And as Jacob pulled back slightly, staring into her eyes, that magical spark ignited a new beginning. They had pushed through the uncertainties, and now they were ready to embrace the extraordinary adventures that awaited them. Love was finally blossoming, and together they would craft their own beautiful story, one moment at a time. Jacob stood by the door of the cozy corner diner, a worn broom pressed against the floorboards, sweeping up the remnants of another busy night. As the sweet aroma of pancakes and coffee lingered in the air, he glanced towards the counter, where Lily was busy stacking plates. The hustle and bustle around her seemed to fade, and in that moment she was the only person in the room. He couldn't help but wonder how many nights he'd swept the floor, catching glimpses of her laughter and the sparkle in her eyes. They exchanged smiles, but that was often where the connection ended. A soft sigh escaped him as he pushed the broom a bit harder, willing himself to cross the invisible line between mere acquaintance and something more. Tonight, he had a plan. His heart raced not just from the anticipation of speaking to her, but because of the watch on his wrist. A custom piece he had designed and saved up for, it represented more than just time. Engraved on the back were the words, "Time is what you make of it," a reminder he hoped would nudge him out of his comfort zone. The music playing in the diner swelled, and the warmth of familiarity enveloped him as he pushed the broom toward the far corner, sweeping away the remnants of the day. But tonight wasn't going to be just another night. He could feel the electric connection humming in the air, begging him to act. As if on cue, Lily glanced up, her bright blue eyes locking onto his. "Hey, Jacob," her voice danced above the clinking of dishes and the hum of conversation. He felt a rush of blood to his cheeks, and he managed a shy smile. "Thanks," her laughter rang out, lighting up the diner even more. It sliced through his nerves, making the moment feel lighter. Jacob took a step closer, heart thudding in his chest. She asked, curiosity weaving into her tone. He lifted his wrist slowly, revealing the gleam of his watch. "I customized this watch." Her expression shifted from curiosity to surprise as her eyes widened. "Oh wow, that's amazing. Time is what you make of it," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Lily leaned closer, absorbing the watch's details as if it were a piece of art. "That's beautiful, it's so true." At that moment, Jacob felt like the world around them had paused. The clatter of dishes and idle chatter faded to a comforting hush, but the bubble burst when Hank, the diner owner, bellowed from the kitchen, "Lily, sure." She replied, her attention diverted. Jacob felt a familiar twinge of disappointment. Every time he thought he was breaking through, something pulled them apart. He dropped the broom against the wall and returned to his sweeping, caught in a cycle of hope and frustration. Days passed, turning into weeks filled with quiet moments and fleeting glances. Jacob often caught himself daydreaming at the counter, waiting for the chance to speak to Lily. Each small conversation felt like a thread weaving them closer, but the barrier of friendship remained sturdy, held in place by his fears. One rainy evening, the diner filled quickly with neighbors seeking refuge from the storm. The soft patter of raindrops against the window created a cozy atmosphere, and Jacob felt a surge of anxiety mixed with excitement. Tonight, he would conquer his fears. As customers trickled in, the scent of hot coffee and fresh pastries enveloped the space. Jacob's heart raced as he approached the counter, determination coursing through him. Her eyes brightened. "Sure," he asked, finally breaking the silence. "I'm good, just busy," she replied, her laughter lightening the mood. "Great, I was wondering," he said, leaning in slightly. She paused, her brow furrowing in thought. "Definitely. Art is about capturing moments after all. I just feel like life moves so fast and we often forget to really appreciate it." He gestured around the diner where laughter mingled, vibrant conversations echoed, and warmth radiated from familiar faces. "Oh, Jacob," she whispered, a smile dancing on her lips. "You're absolutely right." His heart soared at her words, but even in that shared moment, lingering anxiety knotted in his stomach. "And I really want to share more moments together." Lily's laughter softened, and for a flickering moment, he thought it might happen, thought she might understand. But then Hank called again from the kitchen, pulling her away once more. "Lily," she exclaimed, her eyes apologetic as she fled back to work. Jacob stepped back, feeling an odd mix of disappointment and determination. The frustration was familiar, yet tonight something told him not to give up. He refused to let that moment slip away. As the weeks rolled on, their casual exchanges were now layered with unspoken tension. Jacob caught glimpses of Lily painting behind the register during quiet hours, and the way she poured her heart into every stroke captivated him. He began to imagine what it would be like to share more of his life with her, a life colored by laughter, art, and connection. One night after the diner closed, Jacob saw her fall into deep thought while looking at her artwork. He asked, hoping to draw her out of her reverie. "All the time," she confessed, finally turning her gaze toward him. "I want to travel and experience art all over the world," he encouraged, words spilling from him. "There's so much fear," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's part of taking a risk. You never know what could happen unless you try," he replied, feeling a sense of urgency. They stood there in the dim light of the diner, the air thick with possibility. Though it felt electric, Jacob could sense the weight of hesitation still hanging between them. Then she smiled, a small, hesitant smile before glancing back at her art. "Absolutely." He took a step closer, his heart yearning for more. "I'd love to see your journey unfold." Her eyes were wide, and for a moment it seemed like hope sparked in her gaze. Yeah, that night Jacob finally left the diner, feeling lighter. He had taken steps he'd never thought possible, but as the door swung shut behind him, he couldn't help but wonder if he'd taken a step too far. Days rushed by, and as spring melted into summer, the connection between Jacob and Lily grew stronger. They found moments of laughter and comfort, sharing dreams and fears beneath the flickering lights of the diner. Yet despite the deepening bond, Jacob hesitated to take the leap. Every time he thought about confessing his feelings, a cloud of fear stole his voice. Then came the evening that would change everything. The diner was filled with the sounds of laughter and the smell of fresh burgers, and Jacob could feel the energy humming through the air. He caught sight of Lily, and the desire to express his feelings surged within him like a tidal wave. He called out, urgency brushing his words. She replied, her eyes brightening as she came closer, wiping her hands on her apron. He suggested, his heart racing. As they stepped into the evening air, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. It was breathtaking, a perfect moment, the kind Jacob had been dreaming of sharing. Lily asked, turning to face him, the curiosity dancing in her eyes. He took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the moment solidify his resolve. she echoed, a mix of surprise and anticipation coloring her voice. Yes, I really like what we have. His heart raced as he spoke, the words pouring out like a well of love long bottled up inside. A silence followed, heavy yet electric. Jacob held his breath, watching her expression shift. Finally, a soft smile broke through. I'm glad you said that. The world felt as if it held its breath, an unspoken pulse resonating between them. So, he asked, hope flooding his voice. Let's take this day by day, she replied, her tone light yet sincere. Their eyes locked as a sense of understanding swept through them, a promise of something extraordinary waiting to unfold. Jacob took her hand, feeling the warmth simmering beneath the surface, a spark igniting between them. And right then, under the fading light of a summer evening, Jacob knew he had pushed the broom long enough. For the first time, he felt truly seen, not just for who he was, but for all that he could be. As they stood there together, surrounded by the soft sounds of the night, the watch on his wrist glinted in the fading light, a reminder that time was indeed what he made of it. With Lily beside him, the moments to come promised to be filled with laughter, creativity, and the love that had finally blossomed. This was the beginning of their story, and together they would embrace the journey ahead. The sound of the broom sweeping against the diner floor echoed in Jacob's ears, the rhythmic brush of the bristles blending harmoniously with the soft chatter of diners and the sizzle of the grill in the background. Each stroke was a familiar routine, but tonight it felt different. Tonight he was pushing for more than a clean floor. He was pushing for a moment, a connection that had been brewing between him and Lily for months. He paused, glancing over at her as she stacked a plate of pancakes, her hair softly curling around her face, the early evening light reflecting off her bright smile. The way she moved was captivating, and the laughter that bubbled from her mouth made his heart race. Jacob had spent countless hours admiring her from a distance, feeling invisible yet utterly enchanted. But tonight was going to change everything. He had made a decision, a leap of faith fueled by desire and determination. Tucked comfortably on his wrist was a watch that he had poured his soul into customizing. It gleamed under the diner lights, a symbol of both hope and ambition. Those words resonated deeply, pushing him to break free from his shell. With every sweep of the broom, he considered the moment that lay ahead. The closer he got to Lily, the more electric the air around him felt. He hadn't just cleaned the diner for her. He had swept a path to a moment that might bring them together. He leaned the broom against the wall and took a deep breath, steadying himself before crossing to the counter. He felt like a lion poised to leap. He called out, cutting through the ambience of clinking forks and murmured conversations. She turned, her eyes lighting up like candles in the dark. Jacob, there was genuine surprise in her voice, and he took it as encouragement. Yeah, just finished up. He lifted his wrist, showcasing the watch, the faint glimmer catching her attention. Her curiosity piqued as she leaned in closer. Oh wow, that's really nice. Yeah, he said, trying to sound casual but feeling a rush of excitement. I customized it. Her eyes sparkled as they moved over the watch. Time is what you make of it, he replied, a smile creeping onto his face as he plunged into the moment. I figured it'd be a good reminder, you know. That's beautiful, she said, her tone filled with warmth. In that fleeting moment, the noise of the diner faded away. It was just the two of them, the connection crackled like static electricity between them. Jacob felt every ounce of tension slip from his shoulders, but as soon as it blossomed, it retreated. Hank's voice boomed from the kitchen, pulling her away. Lily, oh. She called, her attention snapping back to work as she dashed off. Jacob stood there for a moment, deflated as if the wind had been knocked out of him. He wished he could find the words to pull her back to keep that feeling alive, but instead he returned to the floor, leaning on the broom as if it were a lifeline, the splashes of hope now an aftertaste of despair. The cycle continued over the following weeks, Jacob sweeping the diner, stealing glances at Lily, waiting for the perfect moment to talk to her. Each day brought routines that soothed him but also felt suffocating. He watched her engage with customers, the warmth she exuded drawing people in while he stayed in the shadows, invisible. As the seasons began to shift, the subtle changes around him triggered a transformation in his heart. It was the little things, the way Lily flicked her hair when she was busy, or how she smiled at him during quiet moments, pulling him in closer. But even with those moments of connection, he struggled to bridge the distance. One rainy Thursday evening, the diner brimmed with the irresistible smell of fresh coffee and baked goods. The storm outside matched the turmoil inside Jacob's heart. He was tired of waiting. Out of nowhere, a sense of determination washed over him. As the rain poured down, he felt a surge of urgency to make his move. He called out again, heart pounding in his chest. She turned, a curious eyebrow raised, quickly drying her hands on her apron. He took a breath, stumbling over his words. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but before she could answer, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen as Hank dropped a stack of plates. Lily, she shouted, but the moment slipped away, fading into the din of the diner. Jacob felt that familiar knot in his stomach, the frustrating mix of hope and disappointment. Weeks turned into a blur, and with each shift, Jacob felt both closer to Lily and yet miles away. He'd come to terms with the fact that if he wanted more than fleeting smiles and idle chat, he needed to take a leap of faith. But every time he gathered the courage to speak, he hesitated, fearing the worst. Then one evening, everything changed. The diner closed early due to a power outage, casting the establishment in a cozy darkness punctuated by candlelight. The flickering flames created a warm ambience as they shared small talk and laughter about the challenges of a busy day. "Honestly, I'm just glad we can sit here instead of trying to navigate through that chaos," Lily remarked, her voice light but her eyes reflecting something deeper. He felt a rush of comfort as they sat together, the moment feeling electrified. Right. Suddenly, as if the universe aligned, Jacob felt the urge to push past the boundaries he'd set for himself. "Lily," he started, his voice steady but his heart racing. "I really enjoy our time together, more than just friends actually. I think we have a connection." The diner seemed to hold its breath. She looked at him, surprise etching her features before a blush crept across her cheeks. He felt his heart unfurl, a mixture of dread and hope dancing in his chest. I wouldn't be asking otherwise." Jacob held his breath, waiting for her to process his words. The air was thick with unspoken tension, each flickering candle casting shadows over their faces. Just then, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the diner fully as it returned to life. I need to think," she said, her expression shifting. "I understand," he replied, fighting the urge to retreat. She nodded slowly, biting her lip, her mind racing. "This caught me off guard, Jacob." Jacob's heart sank, a wave of disappointment crashing over him. He feared he had ruined everything. "Of course, take your time," he paused, trying to find the right words. As they lingered in silence, Jacob felt the weight of uncertainty hanging in the air, a gap he hoped would close with time. And then, without realizing it, he reached for his watch. The cold metal felt grounding against his skin. He could see her glancing at the watch, studying it. "That's a nice watch," she said softly, the tension easing slightly. "Thanks," he replied, glancing down at it too. Lily tilted her head, intrigued. "It reminds me that time is limited." He realized that he had unconsciously pushed past his usual patterns. Now he was speaking from the heart. "I get it," she responded, a thoughtful expression unfolding on her face. Her words hung between them, potent and heavy. In that moment she took a step closer, a flicker of determination sparking in her eyes. Jacob held his breath, feeling the potential in the space around them. "Let's not waste time then, Jacob." He felt relief wash over him, intertwined with a rush of excitement. She smiled, and the warmth of that smile lit up the darkness surrounding them. "Yes." But just as hope surged within him, an unsettling noise erupted from outside. A car screeched to a halt, breaking the serenity enveloping the diner, drawing their attention to the window. Lily asked, alarm creeping into her voice. Jacob stepped toward the window, his heart racing once again. A group of figures stood outside, shadows in the streetlight, their voices angry and raised. A surge of fear jolted through him. He turned back to Lily just as confusion washed over her face. And then, before he could respond, one of the figures hurled an object. An empty bottle smashing it against the diner window, the sound shattering the calm of the moment like glass. Jacob yelled, instinctively moving to protect Lily as chaos erupted outside. They ducked under the shelter of the counter, heartbeats pounding in their ears. The world outside had turned into a scene of uncertainty, shifting from warmth and connection to danger and chaos in mere seconds. She asked, fear creeping into her voice as the muffled sounds of shouts and chaos grew louder. "I'll check it out," he said instinctively, but the concern in Lily's eyes held him back. This wasn't just about him anymore. "Wait, no, we should call for help," she urged, moving beside him to reach for the phone, a wisp of urgency mingling with a deeper understanding. But just as she turned to grab it, the door suddenly swung open, and a figure barreled in, bellowing, aggressive, scanning the room like a predator. In that moment, Jacob realized that everything was about to change, that the night he had envisioned as a beginning could easily become something else entirely. He glanced at Lily, the weight of their unspoken words still hanging in the air. Time felt like it was stretching, the promise of new beginnings swirling with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The moment had teetered between hope and chaos, and as the adrenaline coursed through him, he knew they were about to face the storm together, whatever it held.